Right now, statistically speaking, over half of the people listening to this deep dive are actively losing $1 million.
Yeah. It's wild to think about.
And it's not because of like a bad stock market bet or a housing crash or, inflation or crypto or whatever. It is literally because of a 5-second moment of silence that you allowed to happen during a phone call.
I mean, it is the single most expensive 5 seconds of a professional's life. And it happens every single day.
Every day. We're talking about that exact moment. A company calls, they offer you a job, they name a salary, and you just say, thank you, I accept.
Right. You just fold immediately.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we're pulling our insights today from this really fascinating source material. It's actually an advanced English learning resource originally designed for international professionals who are trying to navigate the complexities of the U.S. corporate landscape.
Which is such a brilliant lens to view this through.
It really is.
Yeah.
Because, since it's breaking down American corporate culture for an outside audience, it completely exposes the underlying machinery. It unpacks the psychology, the unwritten rules, and the exact word-for-word scripts of compensation negotiation.
And it does it in a way that is incredibly eye-opening. Even if you've lived and worked in the U.S. your entire life, sometimes it takes an outsider's perspective to kind of reveal the invisible rules of the game you've been playing all along.
Yeah, that's so true.
The source material essentially dissects the mechanics of American compensation as if it were a foreign language. Because, frankly, the way corporations value human labor is a foreign language to most of us.
Totally. So our mission today is to teach you that language. We want to equip you, the listener, with the exact vocabulary, the strategic frameworks, and the behavioral psychology you need to secure your true market value.
Right. We are going to dismantle that biological anxiety around asking for more money.
Yes. So you never leave a dime on the table again. But I want to go back to that staggering number we started with. Over half of American workers accept the very first salary offer they receive without any negotiation whatsoever. Just zero. Why?
Well, it's a really potent mix of psychological barriers. I mean, for some, it's this deep-seated cultural conditioning where discussing money is just considered, crass or impolite.
Right, like you're being aggressive.
Exactly. Or for others, particularly those entering a new industry or maybe transitioning from the public sector to the private sector, it's a profound fear of jeopardizing the opportunity.
Oh, man. I get that.
Right. You've been interviewing for 2 months, you're exhausted, you finally get the offer, and there is this irrational terror that if you ask for, say, $10,000 more, the employer will suddenly gasp, rescind the offer, and blacklist you from the industry forever.
You just feel like you've won the lottery by getting the job at all, and you don't want to test your luck.
Yeah, exactly.
But, okay, let's look at the mechanism behind that $1 million loss over a 30-year career.
Yeah.
Because it's not like you're losing $1 million in year one.
No. It's the ruthless, invisible mathematics of the compounding effect.
Right. Walk me through that math, because I think it's vital to understand the scale of the error we're making here.
Sure. Let's break it down. So say we have 2 identical candidates, candidate A and candidate B. They both get an offer for $100,000. Candidate A takes it immediately.
Because they're terrified.
Right. But candidate B negotiates and gets $105,000. Now, $5,000 spread over 12 months is roughly a couple of $100 a paycheck after taxes.
Which doesn't sound like $1 million.
It doesn't. Most people look at that and think, is an awkward phone call really worth a couple $100 a month? I'll just skip it.
Right. I'll just eat the cost to avoid the discomfort.
Exactly. But watch what happens to that baseline. Next year, the company gives a standard 3% annual raise. Candidate A gets 3% of $100,000. Candidate B gets 3% of $105,000.
So the gap is already widening.
It's widening. Now, apply that same compounding logic to every single financial lever in your entire career. Let's talk about bonuses.
Oh, right, because those are percentages.
Yes. When your year-end bonus is calculated as 10% of your base salary, the person who negotiated gets a mathematically larger bonus every single year.
Wow.
And let's talk about retirement. For our international listeners who might not be familiar with the American system, a 401k match is a retirement vehicle where a company matches your contributions.
Free money, basically.
Exactly, free money. If they match up to 5% of your salary, candidate B is getting more money pumped into the stock market than candidate A. And that extra money compounds in the market over 30 years.
And it doesn't just stay at that one company.
Right.
Like when you leave that job in 5 years for a new role, your new salary expectation is benchmarked against a base that has been compounding at a higher rate.
Precisely. That 5-minute uncomfortable conversation at the beginning of your career is literally the difference between retiring a decade earlier or, paying off a child's entire college education in cash.
That is heavy. But here's the truly tragic part about the 50% of people who stay silent. American hiring managers, they fully expect you to negotiate.
They do. The sources highlight a fundamental concept of corporate finance known as the negotiation cushion.
I really want to dig into the literal mechanics of this cushion. Walk me through, the corporate budget approval process. Why does this cushion even exist?
Okay, so when a department realizes they need to hire someone, the hiring manager has to go to the finance department to get a budget approved.
Right. They need permission to spend the money.
Right. Let's say finance approves a maximum budget of $110,000 for the role. When the recruiter finally calls you to make the offer, they will very rarely offer you that $110,000 right out of the gate.
They hold back.
They hold back. They will deliberately offer you perhaps $100,000. They build in a $10,000 cushion because their standard operating procedure dictates that a negotiation is supposed to take place.
Wow.
They hold money back so that when you ask for more, they actually have the resources to say yes and make you feel like you won the negotiation.
So wait, if I just accept the $100,000 immediately, I am not being a good low maintenance employee.
Mm-hmm.
I am quite literally leaving $10,000 that was already approved, already sitting in an Excel spreadsheet with my name on it, just leaving it on the table for the company to absorb back into their bottom line.
Precisely. Accepting the first offer is a failure to participate in the expected business process. I actually like to use an analogy for this. It's exactly like paying the sticker price at a car dealership without realizing the dealer already factored in a massive discount.
Oh, that's a perfect way to look at it.
Right. You walk onto the lot, the car says $30,000 on the windshield. The salesperson fully expects you to offer 26 so you can meet at 28.
Right. It's a dance.
It's a dance. If you walk up and say, I'll take it for 30, the salesperson isn't going to stop you. They will happily take your money. But you've just overpaid because you didn't understand the rules of the environment.
But let me challenge this for a second. Let's say you're listening to this and you've been unemployed for 6 months, or maybe you're coming from a job where you made $60,000 and an employer suddenly offers you $90,000.
That's a huge jump.
It is. That is a life-changing number. My internal monologue in that moment is screaming, take the money. Don't be greedy. Why risk a sure thing? How do you combat that overwhelming sense of gratitude that makes you want to just say yes on the spot?
It's tough, but you combat it by separating your personal financial history from your objective market value.
What do you mean by that?
Well, a corporation is not a charity. They are not offering you $90,000 as a favor because they feel bad that you were only making $60,000 before.
Right. They don't care about your past rent.
Exactly. They are offering it because the specific role you are stepping into generates significant, tangible value for their business. If the objective market data dictates that the role is actually worth $100,000, then your personal gratitude for the $90,000 is causing you to undervalue your own labor.
Oh, wow. So it isn't greed.
No, it is simply market alignment. You are pricing a business service.
Okay, that makes so much sense. So we know we have to participate in the dance. We know the cushion is there. But, to understand why we end up trapped in that silence, we really have to look at how employers essentially set the trap before an offer is even on the table.
Yes.
And this begins with a seemingly innocent question during the very first phone call.
Premature salary question. This is where the negotiation actually begins, often weeks before you even realize you are in a negotiation.
Right. You apply for the job, you get an email to do a quick 15-minute screening call with a recruiter. You're just trying to make sure your microphone works, you're making small talk about the weather, and then 5 minutes in, they drop the bomb. So, what are your salary expectations? Or, depending on where you live, what are you currently earning?
Let's pause heavily on that second formulation. What are you currently earning? The source provides a vital piece of legal context here. In many major U.S. economic hubs, California, New York City, Colorado, Washington State, and, a rapidly growing list of others, it is fundamentally illegal for an employer to ask about your current or past salary.
Which is a massive paradigm shift. But why is it illegal? What's the actual mechanism of harm there?
Because of the exact compounding effect we just talked about, but applied to systemic inequality.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Yeah. Let's say you were severely underpaid at your last job, perhaps due to a poor negotiation or systemic pay inequity, gender bias, racial bias, whatever it may be. If a new employer forces you to disclose that you are making $60,000, they will anchor their new offer to your artificially low history.
They'll just bump it up slightly.
Right. They might offer you $70,000, which feels like a great raise to you, but the actual market value of the new role is $100,000.
So the practice of asking for salary history literally perpetuates historical wage gaps from one company to the exact next company.
Precisely. These new laws were designed to force companies to pay for the value of the role, not the historical discount of the person.
That is fascinating. The law is literally trying to break the chain of compounding underpayment. But let's look at the more common, completely legal question. What are your salary expectations? Why is answering this question honestly a trap?
It's an information asymmetry problem. It's the cardinal rule of game theory and negotiation. Whoever names a number first is at a severe tactical disadvantage because you are operating blind.
Right. If their internal approved budget is $120,000 and I just blurt out, I'm hoping for $90,000, I just cost myself $30,000 in 5 seconds.
And they will happily agree to 90.
Right. But conversely, if their budget is $90,000 and I blurt out $140,000, they might just screen me out immediately as too expensive before I've even had a chance to interview and prove my worth. It feels like a lose-lose.
Exactly. So the source material breaks down 3 elegant strategies for handling this premature question without seeming evasive or difficult or uncooperative.
Okay, I love this. So if I'm on that screening call and the recruiter asks the question, what is my first tactical move?
Strategy 1 is to redirect with research. You defer giving a number until you understand the full scope of the role. Now, the language here needs to be highly professional.
Okay, let's run a scenario. I'll be the recruiter. So, we're really excited about your background. Just to make sure we're on the same page regarding compensation, what are your salary expectations?
I've done quite a bit of research on comparable roles in this market, and I'm confident we can find a number that works for both of us. But honestly, I'd really love to learn more about the full scope of the role, the day-to-day responsibilities, and the complete benefits package before we settle on a specific figure.
Oh, notice what you did there. You didn't just say, I don't know. You said, I've done research. I am a professional who understands the market. But I literally cannot price my labor until you tell me exactly how much labor you want from me.
Exactly. It is a completely logical business response.
But what if they push back? What if redirecting doesn't work?
If they press, you move to strategy 2. Flip the question. You politely force them to reveal their hand first, leaning on the new transparency trends.
Okay, recruiter mode again. Listen, I hear you, but I really just need to put a number down in my system to move you to the hiring manager round. What are you looking for?
I am really open to discussing compensation, and I want to make sure we find something mutually beneficial. Since you're looking to fill the position, would you be able to share the budgeted salary range that has been approved for this role?
And here is where those state laws come back into play. In many states now, if you ask a recruiter for the budgeted range, they are legally required to give it to you.
Yes. Or they already posted it in the job description because the law forced them to, and you were just gently reminding them of that range.
Right. If companies are forced to disclose ranges, the psychological game shifts completely.
Yeah.
The company's already shown their cards, which eliminates that information asymmetry.
Exactly.
Okay, but let's look at the worst case scenario. Let's say I'm in a state without transparency laws. The recruiter is relentless. I ask for the range, and they say, company policy dictates I cannot share our internal bands. And I really cannot move you to the next round unless you give me a hard number right now.
That's a high-pressure situation.
My heart is racing just thinking about it. I feel like I'm sitting at a poker table and the dealer is holding a gun to my head, demanding I show my hand before any cards are dealt. How do I physically and tactically respond to that wall without caving?
First, you take a breath to manage the physiological panic. If you are backed into a corner and absolutely forced to show your cards to stay in the interview process, you deploy strategy 3. Anchor with a researched range. You provide a range, but the architecture of that range is highly specific. It is not a guess.
Okay, hit me. Recruiter says, I really need a number from you today to move forward.
Based on my research of market rates for this level of role in this geographic area, and considering my 7 years of specialized experience in data architecture, I'm targeting a range of, say, $115,000, $130,000. But I want to emphasize that I'm evaluating the entire opportunity holistically, the role itself, the team, and the total compensation package.
Let's dissect the mechanics of that answer. First, you didn't give a single rigid number. You gave a range. But the secret sauce is where you placed the bottom of that range.
Exactly. You established a psychological floor. The bottom number of the range you give, $115,000 in this example, must be a figure you would be genuinely thrilled to accept as your final salary.
Because they're only going to hear that bottom number.
Right.
Because human psychology and recruiter incentives dictate that the employer will only hear that bottom number and anchor to it. They will say, great, we can do 115. If you say 90 to 110, secretly hoping they meet you in the middle at 100, you are going to get an offer for exactly 90,000.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
You also explicitly cited your research and your specialized experience right before you dropped the number. That justifies the anchor. You aren't just like pulling numbers out of thin air.
Right. You are establishing yourself as a sophisticated operator who understands their own market value.
So successfully navigating that initial screen keeps you in the game without shooting yourself in the foot.
Yes.
You go through the rounds of interviews, you dazzle the panel, you present your case studies, and then it happens. The recruiter calls you up. We loved you. The team loved you. We are thrilled to officially offer you the position. This is the moment of peak euphoria, and it's exactly where the most critical mistake happens.
The golden rule of receiving an offer in the United States: never, ever accept or reject it on the spot.
Even if it's spectacular, even if they offer you $20,000 more than you secretly wanted.
Especially if it's spectacular, you must ask for 24 to 48 hours to review it. The standard script is simple, polite, and firm. Thank you so much. I'm genuinely thrilled about this opportunity and so excited to join the team. I'd love to take a day or two to review all the details of the written offer carefully so I can give it the thoughtful consideration it deserves. When do you need an answer by?
But let me channel the anxiety of the listener here. If I play it cool and ask for 48 hours to think about an amazing offer, won't the employer think I'm unenthusiastic? Won't they assume I'm just using their offer to shop around and get a bidding war going with a competitor? Couldn't the hiring manager just get annoyed and pull the offer entirely?
It is exceptionally rare for a legitimate professional company to pull an offer because a candidate asked for 24 hours to read the contract.
Okay, that's a relief.
In fact, if a company demands an immediate, on-the-spot verbal acceptance and threatens to pull the offer if you hang up the phone, that is a massive, flashing red flag about their toxic internal culture. You probably do not want to work for an organization that relies on coercion.
It's bullying.
Highly coercive. In a healthy corporate environment, immediate acceptance actually makes a candidate look slightly less strategic.
Really? Why?
Think about it from the employer's perspective, especially for mid to senior roles. They are hiring you to make careful, analytical, highly consequential decisions for their business. If you agree to a multi-year, complex financial contract without reading the fine print, without calculating the taxes, you are demonstrating impulsivity, not enthusiasm.
Oh, that's such a good point.
Mm-hmm.
You need to show them you have a CEO mindset. It's like stepping away from a massive painting in a gallery. If your nose is pressed right up against the canvas, all you see is the base salary. It's the biggest, brightest brushstroke.
Yeah.
But you have to step back to see the whole picture, and that whole picture is what the source calls total compensation.
Yes. Total compensation is the holistic package. And during those 48 hours you just bought yourself, you are evaluating everything. Base salary is just one pillar.
What are the other pillars?
You have to look at signing bonuses, annual performance bonuses, equity or stock options, the vesting schedule of that equity, the 401k retirement match, the quality deductibles and premium costs of the health insurance, paid time off, and remote work flexibility.
Let's run a detailed scenario to illustrate why stepping back to see the whole canvas is so critical. Let's look at offer A versus offer B. Let's say offer A is a base salary of $100,000. Offer B is a base salary of $90,000. On the surface, offer A is clearly $10,000 better. Why might offer A actually make you poorer?
Let's look at the hidden math. Offer A gives you $100,000 base, but the health insurance premiums are terrible, costing you $500 a month out of pocket just for your family plan. That's $6,000 a year gone. Right. They have no 401k match, so zero free retirement money. And it requires you to be in a downtown office 5 days a week. That means you are paying for daily commuting, exorbitant downtown parking, professional dry cleaning, and buying lunch. Those physical presence costs can easily exceed $10,000 a year in a major metro area.
Wow. Now let's look at Offer B 90,000 base. But they cover 100% of your family's health premiums. They offer a 5% 401k match, which on 90,000 is $4,500 of pre-tax free money injected into your retirement account every single year.
And let's say it's fully remote. Zero commute costs, zero parking. You reclaim 2 hours of your life every day by not sitting in traffic.
When you do the brutal math on the total compensation, Offer B, despite having a base salary that looks $10,000 weaker, actually puts significantly more net wealth into your pocket, while simultaneously returning hundreds of hours of your life.
Exactly. The modern definition of a lucrative offer has evolved so much. For a lot of people today, extreme remote work flexibility or unique perks like student loan repayment assistance heavily outweigh a simple bump in the base pay.
Absolutely. The holistic analysis allows you to determine what you actually value. And during this critical 24 to 48-hour window, you aren't just doing math, you are also benchmarking the offer against objective market data.
Right. You need external validity. The source mentions tools like Glassdoor, Levels.fyi, which is basically the holy grail for tech industry compensation pay scale, and the Bureau of Labor Statistics.
You need to know what the 25th percentile, the median, and the 75th percentile pay is for your exact title in your exact city.
You gather your data, you evaluate the holistic offer, you formulate your strategy, and then the timer runs out. You have to actually pick up the phone and execute the counteroffer.
And here is exactly how you architect that conversation. We are going to break down the anatomy of a perfect counteroffer.
The primary philosophy to internalize here is that a successful counteroffer in the U.S. is a collaborative dialogue. It is a business discussion. It is not a threat. It is not an ultimatum. The source breaks down a highly effective script into 4 distinct structural parts.
Okay, part 1. Expressing genuine gratitude and enthusiasm.
You start the call by reaffirming that you want to be there. You say, I am so excited about this role and the direction the team is heading. I've loved my conversations with everyone. This is vital because it instantly disarms the recruiter.
It eliminates that perception of adversarial intent.
Yes. They need to know you are negotiating to get to a yes, not looking for an excuse to walk away.
Part 2. Citing objective market data to depersonalize the request.
This is where most people fail. They say, I need more money because my rent went up, or I need more because I have a long commute. Those are personal problems, and they are completely irrelevant to a corporation's evaluation of a role.
They don't care about your rent.
They really don't. Instead, you pivot to the market. After doing thorough research on market compensation for this level of role in the Chicago area, this shifts the narrative from your personal desires to the objective realities of the market. You aren't asking for money, the market dictates it.
Part 3. Highlighting your unique value proposition.
You remind them exactly why they chose you over the 50 other candidates they interviewed. And reflecting on the specialized experience I'd be bringing, particularly my track record of scaling marketing teams from the ground up and driving a 20% increase in Q3.
You are justifying the premium. And finally, part 4. Asking for a specific, confident number.
I was hoping we could explore bringing the base salary closer to $110,000. Notice you are providing a specific anchor. You are never, ever saying, can you do better?
I really want to highlight why asking, can you do better, is a fatal error. If they offered you $90,000 and you say, I love the company, but can you do better? They hold all the power. They might say, sure, we really like you. We can do 92.
And you are completely stuck. You gave up control of the anchor. You allowed them to define the ceiling. You have to name the destination.
But let me push back on anchoring a specific number. Is there a real risk of anchoring too high? Let's say my market research says the role pays around $110,000 on average. I decide to be aggressive and ask for $140,000 just to see if I can get lucky. Will they think I'm delusional?
Yes, there is massive risk. If you anchor wildly outside of the established market data, you severely damage your professional credibility. The employer might conclude that you don't actually understand the industry landscape, or worse, that you have a grossly inflated sense of your own capabilities.
Which is not a good look.
Not at all. Your counteroffer must be grounded in reality, even if you are anchoring at the very top end of that reality, like the 80th or 90th percentile.
I like to compare this 4-part script to a recipe. If you leave out the enthusiasm, the dish is too bitter. You just sound arrogant and demanding. If you leave out the data and the value proposition, the dish lacks substance. You just sound greedy. You need all 4 ingredients. Let's look at the exact script from the source all put together.
Hi, David. Thank you again for the offer. I want to reiterate how excited I am about this role and the impact I know I can make on the team. After doing thorough research on market compensation for the Denver metro area and considering my specialized experience in data analytics, I was hoping we could explore bringing the base salary closer to $110,000.
Every single word is calibrated. Explore bringing is collaborative, not combative. Market compensation is objective. 110 is anchored. So what is the aftermath of this? You deliver this beautiful counteroffer, you hold your breath. What actually happens next?
You have to emotionally prepare for the ping pong effect. Very rarely will a recruiter instantly say, okay, sure, 110, done. More likely, they will say, I appreciate you sharing that. Let me take this back to the hiring manager and the compensation team and see what we can do. They will go away for a day or two, and they will come back with a number somewhere in the middle, maybe 105.
And that is a massive win. You just made $5,000 compounding annually for the rest of your career by reading a 30-second script.
Exactly. But what happens when you deliver this perfect data-backed script and the recruiter responds with, David, I hear you, but our hands are tied. The base salary is rigidly capped at $100,000. We cannot move it a single dollar.
For most people, the negotiation ends right there in a puddle of awkwardness. They say, okay, I understand, I'll take the 100. But if you understand how corporate accounting actually works, a no on base salary is just an invitation to ask for a different kind of money.
This is where truly skilled negotiators separate themselves. You have to understand the systemic mechanics of corporate budgets to understand why a company might aggressively say no to base salary, but happily say yes to other things.
Think of corporate budgets not as one giant pool of money, but as highly guarded, sealed buckets. Explain the difference between the base salary bucket and the other buckets.
To an individual, money is money. To a corporation, money is highly compartmentalized based on risk and liability. Base salaries represent recurring long-term liabilities. It's a leaky bucket. If they raise your base by $5,000, they have to pay that every year forever, plus the compounding raises, plus the increased payroll taxes.
It's expensive for them.
Very. Furthermore, HR strictly monitors the base salary bucket to maintain internal equity. They can't pay you $10,000 more than a peer doing the exact same job sitting next to you without causing an internal mutiny.
But the other buckets are fundamentally different.
Exactly. Let's look at the signing bonus bucket. A one-time signing bonus comes from a completely different accounting ledger. It is a sunk cost for the current quarter. A hiring manager might fiercely reject a $5,000 increase to your base salary, but hold the keys to a $10,000 signing bonus bucket that they can pour out freely to close a deal today.
Because it doesn't break HR's internal pay bands, and it doesn't create a long-term liability for the finance team.
You got it.
So if they say base is locked, which happens frequently in government roles, nonprofits, or highly structured legacy corporations, your immediate tactical pivot is to monetary alternatives. I understand base is rigid due to the bans. Could we bridge the gap with a one-time signing bonus? Or, if you're at a tech startup where cash is tight, could we explore a more generous equity grant or stock options to make up the difference?
And another brilliant lever, which hiring managers absolutely love, is the performance-based bonus tied to KPIs, or key performance indicators.
Oh, let's explore the mechanics of this. You say, if I achieve X, Y, and Z specific targets in my first 6 months, I receive a bonus of $10,000. Why does asking for this actually make you look exceptionally good to an employer?
Because it completely de-risks the financial investment for them. You are aligning your financial incentives directly with their business growth. You are essentially telling the hiring manager, I am so confident in my ability to generate tangible value for this company that I'm willing to bet my own compensation on it.
It's skin in the game.
Yes. Hiring managers love that entrepreneurial mindset. It signals extreme competence. You only get paid if they make money.
Those are the monetary alternatives. What about the non-monetary alternatives?
Yeah.
What is on the secret menu?
These can be just as valuable, if not more so, for your quality of life. We already touched on remote work flexibility. Then there is the professional development budget. You can ask, would the company provide a $5,000 annual stipend for me to attend industry conferences, take executive leadership courses, or get new certifications?
Which, again, comes from a separate training bucket, not the heavily guarded payroll bucket.
Exactly. There's also negotiating for additional paid time off. If we can't meet at my target salary, would you consider starting me with 4 weeks of vacation instead of the standard 3?
But let me interrupt and ask what everyone is thinking. If you're listening to this and thinking, I work at a massive hospital or I work at a Fortune 500 company, are they really going to rewrite their ironclad vacation policies just for me? If everyone in the department gets 3 weeks of PTO, isn't HR going to flag and block my request for 4 weeks immediately?
That is a very common assumption, but it ignores the reality of managerial discretion. It is exactly like discovering a secret menu at a restaurant. Just because it is not printed on the standard company-wide offer letter doesn't mean the kitchen can't make it for you.
Wait, really?
Yeah. Hiring managers often have discretionary power. They might not be able to officially change your accrual rate in the HR software, but they can grant you comp days or unofficially approve an extra week of remote work from a vacation destination. There are always administrative workarounds if the manager wants you badly enough.
The secret menu is real. And here is my absolute favorite non-monetary lever from the sources. If everything else fails, you ask for the accelerated review timeline. Explain why this works so well.
This is a phenomenal high-level tactic. If they absolutely cannot meet your salary request right now due to budget constraints, you ask for an accelerated performance and compensation review. Normally, in a corporate setting, you'd wait 12 months for your first annual review and raise. You say, I understand the constraints today. Would you be open to putting it in my contract that we will conduct a formal compensation review at the 6-month mark based on my performance rather than waiting a full year?
Why does HR and the hiring manager immediately love this? Because it kicks the can down the road. It costs the employer $0 up front today. It solves their immediate budget problem and gets you in the door. But for you, it gives you a guaranteed at-bat to swing for a raise in half the time, right when the new fiscal year budget might be opening up.
It is a brilliant deferral strategy. It keeps the negotiation alive and contracted rather than shutting it down for a whole year.
So these creative levers are incredibly powerful for everyone. But there is one specific group of professionals who falsely believe they aren't allowed to pull NNY levers at all. And this brings us to a topic that requires a massive psychological shift: the visa myth and the true nature of leverage.
This is perhaps the most crucial mindset shift for international professionals operating in the U.S. There is a pervasive, almost toxic myth that if you are in the U.S. on a work visa, whether it's an H-1B, an L-1 transfer, or you are an international student transitioning to OPT, you have absolutely zero negotiating power. The myth says you are a burden. You must quietly accept whatever is offered, put your head down, and be overwhelmingly grateful they are letting you stay in the country.
It's this idea that your visa sponsorship is a massive benevolent favor they're doing for you, so asking for market rate compensation is biting the hand that feeds you. But the reality of corporate mechanics is entirely different, isn't it?
Entirely different. We have to strip away the emotion and look at the objective business reality. Let's look at the mechanism of an H-1B visa, for example. It is a specialty occupation visa. A company has to prove that they need a highly specialized worker. If a company has decided to sponsor you, they have committed to paying thousands of dollars in immigration lawyer fees. They have committed to navigating a labyrinthine bureaucratic process. They have committed to months of waiting. They have massive sunken costs before you even start.
Right. Sponsoring a visa is not cheap, and it is an absolute nightmare for an HR department.
Exactly. So why would a profit-driven corporation willingly go through all of that? They go through it because you possess unique skills, highly specialized technical knowledge, or a global perspective that they could not easily find in the local talent pool. They are not sponsoring you out of charity. They are sponsoring you because they desperately need your specific brain to execute their business goals.
So the fact that they are sponsoring you doesn't mean you are a burden. The fact that they're willing to endure the U.S. immigration system for you means you are highly coveted.
Precisely. Your visa status is a logistical hurdle for their HR and legal departments. It is completely irrelevant to the underlying negotiation of your market value. You advocate for your compensation based on the market data for your skills, period. Accepting a below-market salary out of visa anxiety permanently harms your earning trajectory.
But let me play the ultimate devil's advocate here, because the fear is visceral for people. Let's say I'm on an H-1B, I was laid off, and I have a 60-day grace period to find a new job, or I get deported.
Okay, high stakes.
Right. If my literal right to live in the United States, my ability to keep my apartment and my life, depends entirely on this specific job offer.
Yeah.
Isn't the power dynamic completely one-sided? If they say no to my negotiation, they just dust off their hands and find another candidate. But I have to pack up my life and leave the country. The stakes are wildly asymmetrical.
It feels incredibly asymmetrical emotionally, and I do not want to minimize that terror. But let's look at the employer side of the asymmetry. If they aggressively rescind the offer because you professionally, politely asked for the market rate, they don't just find another candidate easily.
No.
No. They lose the $10,000 they already spent on your legal fees. They lose the 4 months of recruitment time they spent interviewing you. The critical engineering project you were supposed to lead is delayed by another 6 months. The hiring manager looks incompetent to their vice president because they lost their top candidate over a $5,000 dispute. They have massive career-impacting incentives to make it work with you.
I think of it like an analogy of a dinner party. It's like feeling immensely grateful and indebted that someone invited you to their dinner party, completely forgetting that you are the one who is bringing the main course. They need you there for the dinner to happen.
That is exactly it. You are the main course. And let's extrapolate this to a macro level. Consider the tech industry, which relies incredibly heavily on visa workers. There has been a historical depression of wages for certain visa holders because corporations knew they could exploit that exact anxiety. They knew visa holders wouldn't negotiate.
Which is terrible.
But if all international workers universally realized their leverage, separated their immigration anxiety from their professional market value, and negotiated confidently using objective data, it would fundamentally shift the baseline compensation across entire sectors. It would force systemic equity.
The mindset shift required here is massive. You have to intellectually wall off your immigration stress from your business acumen.
It requires immense courage. Knowing logically that you have leverage is the easy part. Believing it, internalizing it, when your heart is pounding out of your chest on a phone call with an aggressive HR rep, that is the ultimate test.
Which perfectly transitions us into the physical reality of doing this, overcoming anxiety and handling pushback. Because, let's be honest, even if you have all the data from levels.vi, even if you know your worth, even if you logically understand the sunk cost fallacy of HR, negotiation triggers a literal biological fight or flight response.
It absolutely does. The adrenaline spikes, the throat gets tight. Even seasoned executives, people who negotiate million-dollar vendor contracts for their companies every single day without blinking, get nervous when negotiating their own salary.
Why is that?
Because it's personal. It feels like your fundamental worth as a human being is being judged and priced by a stranger.
So how do we combat that biological response? The source talks about a specific, powerful cognitive reframe.
The cognitive reframe is critical to lowering the heart rate. You have to stop viewing the negotiation as you begging for a favor. As long as you feel like a subordinate asking for extra scraps from a powerful authority figure, you will be anxious.
Right.
The reframe is understanding that you are solving a business problem. The employer has a painful gap in their organization. You are the solution to that pain. You are entering a peer-to-peer business transaction to determine the fair market price for your solution.
It's B2B. Business to business. You are the CEO of You Incorporated negotiating a service contract with another business. You aren't asking for an allowance. You are pricing a service.
Exactly. But a cognitive reframe in your head isn't enough on its own. To overcome the physical anxiety, the stuttering, the loss of breath, you must rehearse your counteroffer out loud.
Practicing in your head versus practicing out loud is the difference between reading a book about swimming and actually jumping into the deep end of the pool. When you practice in your head while you're taking a shower, you always sound perfectly articulate. You sound like James Bond. But when you open your mouth on the actual phone call, your voice shakes, you lose your breath, you forget the data.
You have to build muscle memory in your jaw and your vocal cords. Say the words to a mirror. Record yourself on your phone's voice memo app and play it back. Better yet, role play with a friend. And you don't just role play the perfect happy scenario where the recruiter says yes immediately. You have to role play the pushback because employers will push back.
Let's do that right now. I want to build the tension. Let's do a rigorous role play of the 3 most common pushbacks the source identifies. I will be the tough, slightly annoyed recruiter. You use the precise responses from our material. Ready?
Ready, let's do it.
Pushback number 1, the budget wall. Listen, I hear you on the 110,000, but honestly, 100,000 is our absolute maximum budget for this headcount. Finance will not approve a penny over. My heart drops. What do I say?
I completely understand that there are firm budget caps, and I really appreciate your transparency on that. Since the base salary is locked, I'm wondering, is there flexibility in other areas of the package to bridge the gap? Could we explore a signing bonus or perhaps an accelerated review timeline at 6 months?
Brilliant. You acknowledge the wall, you don't argue with the wall, and you immediately walk around into the secret menu buckets. Okay, pushback number 2. The internal equity trap. We'd love to pay you more, you're great. But we have 5 other people at this level making $100,000. If we pay you $110,000, we ruin our internal equity and it causes a huge HR issue.
I highly respect the company's commitment to internal pay equity, and I certainly wouldn't want to disrupt that balance on the team. Given the scope of responsibilities we've discussed and the specialized experience I'm bringing, would it be appropriate to look at the title and leveling? Could we consider bringing me in at the senior level, which might align with a different compensation band?
Oh, that is lethal. You aren't arguing their rule. You are agreeing with their rule, but asking to play a different game entirely. You move the goalposts from level 2 to level 3. Okay, pushback number 3, the most sensitive one. The visa investment. We feel the $100,000 is very fair, especially considering we are investing over $10,000 in legal fees for your visa sponsorship. We're taking a risk here.
I am incredibly grateful for the company's investment in my sponsorship, and I do not take that commitment lightly. I also want to ensure that my compensation is fully aligned with the market value for this role, so I can be 100% focused and motivated on driving results from day one. I believe bringing the salary closer to the market rate reflects the ongoing, long-term value I'll be delivering to the team, separate from the initial onboarding costs.
Okay, let me step out of character. I have to ask about the physical feeling of doing this. What if I say all of this perfectly, but I can hear the recruiter getting visibly annoyed on the phone? What if they sigh heavily? What if their tone changes, they get short with me, and the silence stretches for 5 agonizing seconds? How do I stop myself from immediately panicking, apologizing, and withdrawing the request?
That silence is the hardest moment in any negotiation. But you have to recognize that silence and tone are intentional negotiation tactics used against you. When they sigh, when they get quiet or short, your biological instinct is to fill the void by retreating and people-pleasing. You have to hold the line. Bite your tongue if you have to.
Wow. Remind yourself that handling pushback gracefully actually increases your professional standing. The hiring manager is getting a live, real-time preview of how you handle difficult, high-stakes conversations on behalf of their company. If you fold instantly under pressure when advocating for yourself, what does that say about how you'll negotiate with their tough vendors or demanding clients? Standing your ground respectfully is a demonstration of extreme competence. It proves you are the high-level professional they thought they were hiring.
Exactly. Professional friction is not personal rejection. A sigh on the phone does not mean they hate you. It means you are doing business.
Wow. We have covered a massive amount of ground here today, and we've gone deep into the machinery. Let's distill this deep dive into what we can call the golden rules of salary negotiation.
Rule number 1, never accept or reject an offer immediately. Always buy yourself 24 to 48 hours to step back and analyze.
Rule number 2, anchor in data, not emotion. Depersonalize your request by citing objective market research, not your personal financial obligations.
Rule number 3, negotiate the total package. Look beyond the glaring brushstroke of the base salary to the hidden, compounding value of benefits, retirement matches, flexibility, and creative levers like the secret menu.
Rule number 4, express genuine enthusiasm. This is a collaboration. It is a B2B conversation, not a hostage negotiation.
Rule number 5, practice your delivery out loud until the script feels like muscle memory, so your biology doesn't betray you when the recruiter sighs.
And rule number 6, specifically for our international listeners or anyone battling severe imposter syndrome, deeply know your objective market worth, regardless of cultural conditioning, your historically low past salaries, or the bureaucratic hurdle of your visa status.
And to make sure this isn't just theory that you listen to and forget, we have listener homework. 3 highly actionable steps you can take today, even if you aren't currently interviewing.
Step 1. Research your target salary market percentiles. Don't guess. Go to Glassdoor, Payscale, or Levels.ifi. Find the 25th, the median, and the 75th percentile for your exact job title in your specific city. Write those numbers on a Post-it note and stick it to your monitor. That is your reality check.
Step 2, draft and rehearse your counteroffer script. Use the 4-part architecture we discussed: gratitude, data, value, anchor. Say it out loud at least 5 times while looking in a mirror until you stop stumbling over the numbers and the transitions.
Step 3, Identify the 3 non-salary benefits that you value most in your life right now. Is it fully remote work? A massive training budget? Extra vacation days to see family? Know your fallback levers before you ever get on the phone, so if you hit a budget wall, you know exactly which bucket to ask for next.
If you do those 3 things, you are mathematically more prepared than 95% of the candidate pool.
Now, as we wrap up, I want to leave you with a final, slightly provocative thought to mull over. We spent this whole deep dive talking about how to play the game, how to navigate the negotiation cushion, how to use information asymmetry to your advantage, how to deploy psychological anchors. But the macroeconomic landscape is shifting under our feet.
The pay transparency laws are changing the foundation of the game.
Right. If corporate employers universally expect a negotiation cushion, but sweeping new state laws are rapidly forcing companies to publicly post their exact, mathematically rigid salary ranges on every job description, are we approaching a near future where this entire dance becomes obsolete?
It's a fascinating structural question for the next decade of work. As information asymmetry completely disappears, as open-source salary data becomes the norm, and legal mandates force total transparency, will we see the death of the counteroffer entirely?
Imagine a world where you interview, you crush it, and the recruiter calls and just says, "You are a level 3 engineer. The flat rate for level 3 is $120,000, 5% bonus, 3 weeks vacation. There is no negotiation. Take it or leave it."
It sounds incredibly utopian from a systemic equity standpoint. It completely eliminates the insidious wage gaps caused by unconscious bias or the cultural differences in negotiation styles that we discussed earlier. Everyone gets paid the exact same for the exact same work. It removes the anxiety entirely.
But if we replace the murky negotiable waters with a strict, rigidly transparent menu of flat rates for everyone who really wins in the end, if you can no longer negotiate your individual worth, if you can't leverage your unique brilliance or your specific track record to command a premium over your average peers, do the ultra-high performers lose out? Does extreme transparency inevitably commoditize human talent?
It is the ultimate tension between collective equity and individual exceptionalism. If you remove the game, you remove the ability to win the game. It's something the corporate world and all of us as professionals are going to have to reckon with very soon.
It really is. So we started this deep dive talking about how assessing our professional worth is terrifying because there is no objective X-ray machine. It's murky, it's ambiguous. But hopefully, after understanding the machinery today, you realize that you don't need a machine to prove your value. You just need the right data, the strategic framework, and the courage to step back, look at the whole canvas, and confidently ask for exactly what you're worth.
You can be the absolute smartest person in the room. You can have this flawless resume that, practically glows in the dark.
Right. The perfect candidate on paper.
Exactly. You can completely crush the interview panels, totally charm the hiring manager, and aggressively negotiate a massive salary that perfectly reflects your technical brilliance.
Wow.
You can do all of that, sign the offer letter, and still completely torpedo your career in the first 72 hours.
Which is a terrifying thought, honestly.
It really is. And why does it happen? Because getting the job and keeping the job require completely different skill sets.
Oh, absolutely. They're totally different games.
The actual rules for surviving your first week in the American workplace are hidden. I mean, they are never written down in that shiny employee handbook you get from HR.
No, definitely not.
They certainly aren't in the onboarding PDFs. And today, we are going to expose them.
It is the ultimate professional paradox, isn't it?
Uh-huh.
We operate under this comforting illusion that corporate hiring is a pure meritocracy.
Right, like it's all just about your skills.
Yet we want to believe it's like engineering, like it's binary, visible, categorized entirely by hard skills.
Just input and output.
Exactly. But the reality of stepping into a new role, particularly in the United States, is that you are instantly navigating incredibly murky, unspoken cultural waters.
And that is exactly our mission for this deep dive. You, the listener, have done the hard part, right? You got the job.
Congratulations.
Yeah, congrats. But now we need to talk about survival. We are pulling our insights today from a truly fascinating document.
It really is a remarkable piece of source material.
It is a specialized, highly tactical field guide originally designed for C2 level English learners, meaning advanced, near-fluent professionals coming from outside the U.S.
Right, people who already have a mastery of the language itself.
Exactly. But what makes this document so brilliant is that by teaching non-natives how to survive, it inadvertently holds up a mirror to the bizarre, deeply counterintuitive, and often ruthless psychological rules of American corporate culture.
It essentially functions as an anthropological study. It's fascinating.
It really is. Like, it takes all these micro-interactions.
The things that native-born American professionals navigate completely subconsciously.
Yes. And it reverse engineers them into explicit, observable behavioral scripts.
Which is incredibly rare to see laid out so plainly.
Right. So today, we are going to serve as your cultural translators. We are going to decode the unspoken rhythms of American business so you can establish yourself as a high-potential contributor from day one.
That's the goal.
Okay, let's unpack this, because before we look at the hour-by-hour playbook of your first day, we have to establish the overarching, foundational, philosophical difference.
The big picture.
Yeah, the huge difference between the American workplace and almost everywhere else in the world.
And that fundamental difference comes down to the very concept of the onboarding period.
Right, the famous first few weeks.
Yeah. If we look at the global landscape, if you are stepping into a corporate role in parts of Asia, Latin America, the Middle East, or Southern Europe, the first week, and sometimes even the first month, is generally understood to be a highly protected period.
It's like a grace period.
Precisely. It is explicitly understood by both you and management that you are there to acclimatize.
Just to sort of soak it in?
Exactly. The company assumes you know very little about their specific internal machinery. So you are given the runway to observe the social dynamics.
To figure out who is who.
Right, to map out the unspoken hierarchy, to understand the protocols, and frankly, to make mistakes in a safe environment.
Because you're new. It makes sense.
Yeah, you are essentially in a protected observational learning mode.
But then you look at the American model, and that grace period basically evaporates.
Completely vanishes.
The data we are looking at highlights this one idiom that is just absolutely pervasive in U.S. business culture.
Oh, I know exactly which one you're going to say.
You were expected to hit the ground running.
Yes. What's fascinating here is the sheer kinetic violence implied by that phrase.
Right. It's so intense.
Hit the ground running. If you really think about the physics of that metaphor, you aren't landing gently, stretching your legs, taking a look at the scenery.
Stretching your hamstrings.
Exactly. And then working your way up to a light jog. You are expected to be at maximum velocity the very millisecond your feet make contact with the floor.
Which sounds completely exhausting.
In the American corporate market, this translates to a ruthless expectation of immediate, tangible productivity.
They want results.
Now, yes, you must be autonomous and you must be actively adding value almost immediately, often by day 3 or day 4 of your first week.
Wait, let me push back on this for a second, because if I'm looking at this objectively, isn't hitting the ground running just a massive recipe for burnout?
Wrong.
Or worse, like incredibly sloppy work? If I'm a manager, I think I would much rather have a new hire take a full week to genuinely learn the system.
Rather than rushing in.
Yeah, rather than rushing in and breaking a critical database on day 2 just because they wanted to look proactive. It seems totally counterproductive.
Logically, you make a very sound argument. And in a vacuum, most management theorists would totally agree with you.
Right.
But you have to view this through the lens of the specific structural realities of American capitalism.
Okay, break that down for me.
The American market generally has an incredibly low tolerance for a lengthy acclimatization period because it is a culture that prioritizes immediate output over hierarchical observation.
Output over observation. Got it.
The corporate machinery operates at a breakneck pace, driven heavily by quarter-over-quarter results. The financial horizon is often very short.
So they're always looking at the immediate bottom line.
Precisely. So when a team gets approval for the budget to hire a new person, it's usually because they were already drowning in work 3 months ago.
Ah, so they don't have the luxury of letting you observe. They are throwing you a bucket because the boat is already taking on water.
That is a perfect analogy. Yeah. Exactly. They demand that new pieces of the machine function instantly. The cultural ideal is not the wise patient learner. The cultural ideal is the instant plug-and-play problem solver.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? It means that instead of merging gently onto the corporate highway via an on-ramp,
you're being dropped from the sky.
Literally. You are essentially being dropped out of a helicopter directly into moving traffic. And this sudden, massive expectation of autonomy creates what this field guy brilliantly terms a perfect storm of anxiety.
And it really is a perfect storm.
Think about it. You are simultaneously trying to navigate entirely unfamiliar technology stacks.
You don't even know where the files are saved.
Right. Plus, you are deciphering deeply cryptic email etiquette. You are trying to map the complex social dynamics of an open plan office.
Finding out who actually has the power.
Exactly. And oh, by the way, you are actually trying to do the highly complex technical job you were hired to do.
All at the same time.
All while maintaining a facade of being completely confident and unfazed.
Which brings us to the tactical execution. Because if the overarching expectation is this intense, immediate autonomy,
then you really can't mess up the start.
exactly. How you handle the very first hour on Monday morning sets an almost unshakable psychological anchor for your entire tenure at that company.
Yes. Let's talk about day one, hour one, the arrival. Because time management nuances are our first major cultural trapdoor.
And they vary so wildly around the world.
They really do. Let's look at the global contrast first. In many cultures, arriving exactly on time is considered the height of respect. It shows precision.
Right. 9 o'clock means 9 o'clock.
Exactly. In other cultures, maybe arriving just a few minutes late on a first day is actually a subtle sign of deference.
Because it shows you recognize the managers are busy and you aren't rushing them to attend to you.
Yeah, giving them space. But in America, particularly in high-velocity industries like tech, finance, or consulting, the unwritten law is 10 to 15 minutes early.
But the nuance here is critical. 10 to 15 minutes early and absolutely no more than that.
Not a minute more.
Arriving exactly on the dot of 9:00 a.m. isn't quite enough to project the hungry, proactive energy they're looking for.
You look a little too casual.
Right. But arriving 30 or 45 minutes early, which many eager new hires do, thinking it shows incredible dedication.
And it creates a massive problem.
It really does. It creates immense awkwardness.
It's so awkward. Like, what are you even doing there?
If you show up at 8:15 for a 9:00 a.m. start, the office is likely half empty. The HR representative or your direct manager is probably trying to get their own morning coffee.
Or clear out their weekend inbox.
Or literally set up your desk. By arriving that early, you force them to scramble before they're ready to host you.
You become a burden.
Exactly. Ironically, instead of making you look dedicated, it signals poor time management and a lack of social awareness.
Wow.
It shows you don't understand the cadence of a professional morning. 10 to 15 minutes is the absolute sweet spot.
It signals eager anticipation without crossing the line into desperation.
Or burdening your new team.
Okay, so you've nailed the arrival time. It's 8:47 a.m. You walk through the glass doors into the lobby. The field guide gives us an incredibly specific behavioral script for this exact moment.
And it's all about body language and initiative.
You do not check in with security and then sit silently on the lobby sofa, waiting patiently to be collected like a lost child at a grocery store.
Please don't do that.
You use an upbeat, direct eye contact script. You walk right up to the receptionist or the first point of contact and say, "Good morning. I'm Emma, the new marketing strategist.
I'm here for my first day.
Could you please point me toward my manager, David, or the HR department?"
Notice the internal architecture of that specific introduction. It is not just polite, it is structurally assertive.
Break that down. Structurally assertive.
You are employing direct eye contact, you are claiming clarity of your own name and your official role.
You're not just the new girl.
Right. And most importantly, you are actively initiating the next step. Could you please point me toward?
You aren't asking permission to exist.
Exactly. You are directing the momentum of the interaction rather than passively waiting for the company to process you.
Which perfectly tees up the rest of that terrifying first hour. You're greeted, you're shown to your new desk, you're handed a sleek new laptop, and then
the real test begins.
yes, in what I think is the most purely American corporate move ever, you are often just left completely alone.
Oh, happens all the time.
The manager says, "Great to have you. Get yourself set up. I'll swing by later." And they just vanish.
And this moment right here is an absolute test.
Wait, really? A test?
Whether the manager consciously realizes they are testing you or not, your behavior in this isolation is being evaluated.
Oh, wow. Okay, let's frame this globally again.
Right. In many deeply hierarchical cultures, if a manager leaves you at your desk with a closed laptop, you wait for instructions.
Because doing something on your own would be risky.
Exactly. Taking unsanctioned action, poking around the company intranet, or configuring systems without being explicitly told to do so could be viewed as presumptuous, arrogant, or even mildly insubordinate.
So in those cultures, waiting is a demonstrated sign of respect for the established process.
Yes. But in the American workplace, Waiting is a death sentence.
A death sentence.
The expectation is what the researchers call a proactive default.
Proactive default. I love that term.
The American obsession with proactive problem solving cannot be overstated. It is the defining trait of their corporate heroes.
So let's look at the IT failure scenario outlined in the text because it's a brilliant distillation of this concept.
It really is the classic example.
You open your new laptop on day one, you try to log in, and your email credentials aren't working. You are locked out.
A total roadblock.
Right. Now, in a hierarchical culture, the polite, respectful move might be to sit quietly, perhaps review some printed onboarding materials.
And wait for your designated IT orientation, which is scheduled for 2 hours from now on your calendar.
Because you respect the schedule.
Exactly. You respect the schedule. But in the American context, waiting 2 hours for a scheduled meeting to fix a current roadblock is viewed as a massive failure.
I want to pause and really lean into this because this is wild.
It goes against so many instincts.
If I sit quietly at my desk, not bothering anyone, reading the company handbook while I wait for AT, I am failing.
You're demonstrating a complete failure of initiative.
Oh my gosh.
The underlying American philosophy is that you do not let systems dictate your productivity.
You break the system to fix the problem.
The expected default is that the minute you realize your email is locked, you immediately hunt down the solution.
How? You don't even know anyone.
You find the IT support channel on Slack, you use your personal phone to email the recruiter, or you literally stand up, walk down the hall, and politely interrupt someone to ask where the IT help desk is physically located.
Just start asking strangers?
Yes. The expectation is that you relentlessly remove your own roadblocks.
Think about your natural instinct as you're listening to this right now. Picture yourself at that desk. The screen flashes an error code. What is your default physical reaction?
Do you shrink back or lean in?
Exactly. Do you sit back out of respect for the hierarchy and the schedule, or do you lean forward and start breaking glass to get it fixed?
Because if the expectation is to be instantly proactive, but you are brand new to the company, you are inevitably going to run into walls that you genuinely cannot climb over on your own.
And that tension is the crux of the first week dilemma. It forces us to entirely reevaluate how, when, and why we ask for help.
Because here is the vital nuance. The proactive default does not mean management expects you to magically possess all the answers.
They know you're new.
They know you don't know the specifics.
Right.
It means you must be violently proactive in acquiring the knowledge you lack.
Which brings us to this incredible pivot the field guide calls the SMART question framework.
This is such a crucial shift in mindset.
I found this section absolutely mind-blowing because it flips everything I thought I knew about appearing competent. In so many cultures, asking questions, especially early on, is a signal of ignorance.
It implies you weren't paying attention.
Right. Or it implies you don't possess the baseline intelligence required for the role. In those cultures, you are expected to watch quietly, listen deeply, and infer the answers through observation.
But in fast-moving American environments, that type of respectful silence is interpreted as deadly incompetence.
I don't think you're being respectful.
Not at all. If you sit quietly in meetings, American managers do not assume you are respectfully absorbing the wisdom of your elders.
What do they assume?
They assume you are completely disengaged, apathetic, or worse, so incredibly lost that you don't even know what to ask.
Wow.
In this culture, asking clarifying questions early and often actually functions as a primary signal of competence.
And this is a massive flashing neon, but you cannot just ask anything.
Absolutely not.
You can't tap your manager on the shoulder and ask a question you could have resolved with a 3-second Google search or by checking the company wiki.
That will backfire instantly.
There is a very specific formula to asking a question that makes you look like a genius rather than a burden.
Let's hear the script.
The script provided is this. I want to make sure I'm approaching this correctly. My understanding is X. Does that align with how the team typically handles this, or is there a different protocol you'd recommend?
What is truly fascinating here is the underlying psychological warfare of that specific phrasing.
Psychological warfare, I love that. Let's deconstruct it piece by piece.
Okay, when you start with, my understanding is X, you are doing something incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
You are proving preliminary intellectual labor.
You've done the homework.
Exactly. You are showing your manager that you haven't just encountered a wall and immediately thrown your hands up in defeat, begging to be rescued.
Right. You are bringing a potential solution to the table, not just dumping a problem in their lap.
You have analyzed the situation, gathered what data you could, and formulated a working hypothesis. It takes ownership of the issue.
And then you follow it up with, does that align with how the team typically handles this?
This second half is absolutely crucial for your political survival.
Because you don't want to sound like a know-it-all.
By asking for alignment, you are showing profound respect for the existing expertise and historical context of the organization.
You aren't storming in with arrogant, disruptive energy, claiming your hypothesis is the only correct way to do things.
You are seeking to integrate your logic with their established systems.
This single script is a magic trick. It instantly transforms the new hire from a passive, high-maintenance recipient of training into an active, respectful, high-value collaborator.
It is the ultimate display of proactive alignment.
Okay, so you know how to ask the smart question. You've got the psychological framework down, but now you have to navigate where to ask it.
Which is a whole different minefield.
Because you aren't always going to be standing next to your manager's desk. And here's where it gets really interesting, because we are diving into what might be the most dangerous, booby-trapped cultural minefield of all.
The American digital ecosystem.
Yes. You can master all the face-to-face scripts, but if you fail online, you fail entirely.
The transition for international professionals is often jarring.
Jarring is an understatement. It is like switching from writing elegant, multi-page Victorian literature with a quill pen to punching out military telegraphs under incoming fire.
That is a highly evocative, but entirely accurate way to describe the whiplash.
Right. Let's start with the cornerstone of corporate communication, email.
If we connect this to the broader picture of global business correspondence, the American email culture is an extreme, isolated outlier.
How so?
It is aggressively informal, ruthlessly direct, and relentlessly rapid fire.
The contrasts highlighted in the guide are almost comical. Imagine you were coming from a business culture in India or Japan or Germany.
Where formalities are strictly observed.
Exactly. Where you might open an email to a superior with "Dear esteemed director" or "Dear sir," and you meticulously craft a closing like "Yours faithfully" or "With my deepest respects."
Standard, polite, professional behavior in those regions.
But if you bring that exact same energy to an American tech company or a modern marketing agency, the default reaction isn't going to be, "Wow, what a polite new employee."
The reaction is going to be total confusion.
Worse than confusion, it brands you immediately as an irreconcilable outsider.
Yes. If you use overly formal, deferential openings in an American startup, you signal that you fundamentally do not understand the flat hierarchy they pride themselves on.
So what's the rule?
The unwritten rule is that you default to first names almost instantly. Hi, Sarah. Or quite often, just Sarah, followed by a comma.
No titles.
You do not use Mr. or Embas or Director unless it is explicitly formally requested, which is exceedingly rare outside of highly conservative legal or banking sectors.
But it's not just the greeting, it's the actual body of the email where the true culture shock happens.
The demand for brevity.
The mandate here is ruthless brevity. You must keep it under 3 short paragraphs. Bullet points are your absolute best friend. You bold the key dates. You highlight the action items.
Because you have to understand the environment the American professional is operating in. They are drowning in an ecosystem of extreme information overload.
So true. Hundreds of emails.
They might be receiving 200, 300 emails a day. A dense, polite, beautifully crafted paragraph of prose detailing your thought process will simply go unread.
It just gets skipped over.
It is not valued for its eloquence. It is actively resented for the cognitive load and the time it takes to parse.
Wait, let me stop you there. Doesn't that feel incredibly rude? If I just shoot off a bulleted list to my boss that says, "Need budget approval, deadline Friday, see attached," aren't I basically barking orders at them?
It feels rude if your cultural definition of politeness is rooted in demonstrating social deference and taking the time to observe formalities.
Okay.
But in America, the ultimate form of professional politeness is saving someone else's time.
Brevity is respect.
Exactly. Brevity is respect. By cutting the fluff and giving them a bolded, scannable action item, you are essentially saying, I respect how busy you are, so I have synthesized this down to its pure essence for you.
That is why, for sign-offs, you stick to best, or thanks, or even just your initials, never sincerely in a day-to-day internal communication.
It's too formal.
That is such a massive paradigm shift. Politeness equals brevity. But honestly, email is almost the easy part compared to the Wild West of instant messaging.
Oh, absolutely. Slack, Microsoft Teams, Google Chat.
These platforms have completely rewritten the fundamental laws of workplace physics. The data points out that these messaging systems were explicitly designed by Silicon Valley to artificially flatten corporate hierarchies.
Yes, and the implications of that flattened hierarchy are profound.
In a traditional international corporate structure, the idea of directly messaging someone 3 or 4 levels above you,
Say a VP or a CEO.
yeah, without going through your manager first, is practically unthinkable. It would be viewed as gross insubordination.
But in the American workplace, armed with Slack, you are actually encouraged to DM the CEO directly if, and only if, you have a genuinely relevant, high-impact question or a critical project update.
But the tone you were supposed to use in these DMs is this bizarre, almost impossible tightrope walk. They call it casual professional.
It's a very specific voice.
You are supposed to write like you speak, but without sounding uneducated. You use contractions, all, can't, won't.
To keep it conversational.
But the part that absolutely blew my mind was the section on emojis. Emojis are practically mandatory in American Slack culture to soften the bluntness of the text.
They act as digital tone indicators.
But they are governed by highly regulated, completely unspoken social laws.
It truly is a completely unspoken taxonomy of digital symbols, and violating it can make you look remarkably out of touch.
Let's look at the breakdown. A simple thumbs-up emoji is the absolute gold standard of American digital efficiency, right?
Yes, it acknowledges receipt of a message, signals agreement, and ends the interaction without demanding a new text reply that would trigger another notification for the sender.
So a thumbs up doesn't really mean I like this. It just means I saw this and I am currently working on it. It's a performance of availability.
Exactly. It's a digital head nod. Similarly, a celebration emoji, like the little party popper or the rocket ship.
Very popular in tech.
Oh, extremely. That's entirely expected when a colleague announces a team win or a closed deal. It shows you are a team player.
But the text explicitly warns against using what it calls overly emotive symbols. For instance, excessive flower emojis or the folded praying hands.
You have to be so careful with those.
Which is wild because in places like India or Southeast Asia, the folded praying hands are a standard, deeply respectful way to express gratitude or acknowledge a senior leader.
But if you drop 3 praying hands emojis into an American Slack channel after someone sends you a PDF, it misfires completely.
What do they think it means?
In the American context, those symbols can read as unprofessionally intimate, overly spiritual, or dramatically subservient.
Too intense for sending a PDF.
Exactly. It breaks the casual professional facade. It makes people slightly uncomfortable because it introduces a level of emotional weight that doesn't belong in a transactional request.
Okay, so you have to decode the emojis. But then there's the terror of what they call radio silence, the response times.
This is a huge point of friction.
In some global cultures, getting an email or a message and taking a full day or even just a few hours to thoughtfully research the answer before replying is perfectly acceptable.
It shows you're taking the request seriously.
Not in the United States. In the fast-paced, hyper-connected American workplace, the expectation during business hours is a near-immediate response, at least on instant messaging platforms.
You cannot leave them hanging.
If someone messages you on Slack with a question and you read it, but you don't reply immediately because you were diligently digging through files to find the correct answer, you are committing a major trust-destroying faux pas.
Right, because the sin isn't that you are delaying the work.
The work takes as long as the work takes.
Exactly. The sin is the radio silence itself. The sin is leaving the sender staring at a read receipt, wondering if you are ignoring them, if you misunderstood the question, or if you even exist.
Which raises an incredibly important tactical question for a new hire. How on earth do you respond immediately to a complex question when you have absolutely no idea what the answer is yet?
The field guide provides the ultimate corporate lifesaver here. The concept of the holding message.
Yes, the holding message. It's the digital equivalent of catching a ball and calling a timeout. The script is, thanks for sending this over. Looking into it now, we'll circle back by 3 p.m.
Let's focus on that phrase.
Yeah.
Circle back.
It's a classic.
That phrase is an absolute pillar of American corporate speak, and for good reason. It functions as a perfect expectation management tool. It does 3 things simultaneously.
Okay, what's the first one?
First, it confirms receipt of the message, ending the sender's anxiety.
Then you know you got it.
Second, it demonstrates that you possess that highly valued proactive energy because you are looking into it now.
You're on it.
And third, it establishes a firm, concrete timeline for the actual delivery of the work. It completely neutralizes the anxiety of radio silence without forcing you to invent an answer on the spot.
So really, the American digital ecosystem isn't about deep communication at all. It's about performing availability and managing anxiety.
That's a very sharp way to put it.
Okay, so you are mastering this digital space. You're bullet pointing your emails to save time. You're throwing out thumbs up emojis to show you're online. You're circling back by 3 p.m. You feel like you're crushing it.
You're doing great online.
But you can master the Slack emojis all you want, and if you don't understand how Americans build trust off screen, you are still going to fail.
Yes, the physical interactions.
Because while you are typing away, your physical presence is being secretly, constantly evaluated, and that evaluation happens at 12:00 p.m.
Which brings us into the physical realm, the social vetting grounds, specifically lunch and the after-work happy hour.
This section of the text is where genuine, heartbreaking culture shock happens for so many international workers.
Because the contrast is just so stark.
It really is.
Yeah.
Because in vast portions of the world, the guide specifically mentions Spain, Italy, Brazil, parts of India, France. Lunch is a sacred communal ritual.
It's protected time.
It is a protected block of time, often up to 2 hours. You leave the office, you sit at a table, you eat a hot, real meal with your colleagues, and you talk about life.
Contrast that with the United States. In America, particularly in high-pressure corporate environments, the concept of a dedicated lunch hour is almost entirely mythological.
It just doesn't exist.
Lunch is very often a working meal eaten out of a plastic container while staring at a spreadsheet. Or, incredibly commonly, it is a skipped meal entirely.
And the text points out that it is genuinely tragic how many brilliant international professionals commit what it calls social suicide in their very first week because they misread this dynamic.
It happens so often.
I want to paint a picture here to make this concrete. Imagine a highly recruited, incredibly talented software engineer who just moved from Tokyo to work at a tech firm in Seattle. It's his first week.
He wants to make a good impression.
Exactly. Every day at noon, a few guys from his team invite him to grab a quick burger or a sandwich down the street. But this engineer wants to prove his worth. He wants to show his managers that he is a tireless worker.
He's trying to hit the ground running.
Right. So he declines the invitation 3 days in a row. He stays at his desk, eating a protein bar, optimizing code through the lunch hour. He thinks he is demonstrating elite dedication.
But what is actually happening is a slow-motion catastrophe for his career.
Why? What's going on behind the scenes?
When the promotion cycle hits 6 months later, or when a plum assignment opens up, that engineer gets passed over, and the manager's justification won't be about his code.
They won't mention the code at all.
No. The manager will say something vague like, he's just not quite a culture fit, or he doesn't really gel with the team, all because of a missed cheeseburger.
Exactly. Because that engineer fundamentally misunderstood what lunch actually is in the American workplace. The golden, unbreakable rule for week 1 is this: accept every single lunch invite.
Every single one.
Even if you aren't hungry, even if you brought food from home, even if you have a massive mountain of HR onboarding paperwork to finish, if a colleague invites you to lunch, you drop everything and you go.
And we have to explain why. Why is declining a sandwich considered social suicide? It is entirely about the hidden mechanics of vetting.
What does vetting actually mean in this context?
Well, in hierarchical cultures, trust is built structurally into the organizational chart. You trust someone because of their title and their tenure.
The org chart tells you who to trust.
Right. In America, despite the existence of formal org charts, actual work gets done through informal, horizontal networks of trust. Trust is built in the trenches.
So when they invite you to lunch, they aren't just being hospitable, they are covertly assessing you.
Precisely. It is an informal interview. They're trying to figure out who you are when the professional mask slips slightly. Are you arrogant? Do you complain about the onboarding process? Are you genuinely curious about the team culture?
Are you easy to be around?
Most importantly, they're asking themselves, is this someone I want to be stuck in a conference room with at 8 p.m. on a Friday when a major project is failing?
Well, that's a real test.
If you decline to sit at your desk and work, you aren't proving you're a hard worker. You are proving that you don't value the trust network. You are actively rejecting the vetting process.
You are isolating yourself from the exact social mechanism that will allow you to succeed and get favors done later. But what happens if no one invites you? The guide acknowledges that in busy American offices, people might just forget you are new and everyone eats at their desks.
If that happens, The proactive default applies again. You cannot just sit there in silence. You have to extend the invitation yourself.
And here is the exact script the guide provides to do that without sounding desperate. Hey, I'm new here and trying to get my bearings. Would anyone be interested in grabbing a quick lunch today?
Let's analyze that phrase, get my bearings. It is a navigational metaphor derived from sailing or hiking.
It sounds so natural.
It signals a high degree of cultural fluency. You aren't saying I am lost and lonely. You are saying I am orienting myself to this new landscape.
It's confident.
It flatters your colleagues by implicitly asking for their local expertise, which makes them feel valued and much more likely to say yes.
And this intense vetting process doesn't end at 1:0 p.m. It extends into the evening with the infamous American happy hour.
The after-work drinks.
The team invites you out for a beer or a cocktail after work on Thursday. The guide is crystal clear on this. While HR might call it an optional social event, in your first week, it is absolutely mandatory. You have to go and you have to stay for at least 1 full hour.
It is an extension of the workplace. The venue has changed, the beverages contain alcohol, but your behavior is still being rigorously observed, just under different lighting.
But this introduces a massive problem. You have to go and you have to talk because the whole point is building trust. But what on earth do you talk about?
This is where people get into a lot of trouble.
The guide breaks down the conversation minefields into safe versus unsafe topics. The safe topics are exactly what you'd expect. Local sports teams, the food scene in the city, mild travel stories, weekend plans.
Notice the common thread there. They're all surface level, positive, forward-looking, and fundamentally low-stakes topics.
But the unsafe topics are what really caught my eye, especially when you contrast this with other cultures where sharing a drink after work is viewed as a time for profound, vulnerable bonding.
Opening up completely.
Yeah. But in the American workplace, unsafe topics include politics, religion, family trauma, and ironically, salary specifics.
That last one is so uniquely American.
Think about that for a second. You literally just spent a month aggressively fighting tooth and nail with HR to negotiate your salary, and now you can never, ever speak of it to your peers.
If we connect this back to the broader sociological picture, the American workplace values a very specific, carefully calibrated type of professional distance.
Professional distance.
You are expected to be friendly, but you are not necessarily expected to be friends. The goal is friction-free collaboration.
Friction-free.
Oversharing about a painful divorce, detailing your childhood trauma, or bringing up a highly charged, polarizing political election over a beer violates that professional distance.
It makes people tense.
It makes people deeply uncomfortable. And in the middle of a vetting process, making your new colleagues uncomfortable is an immediate red flag.
Because they won't want to work with you.
They will smile, they will nod, and they will privately decide that you lack the emotional regulation required for leadership.
Okay, so let's say you navigate this perfectly. You ask the smart questions, you circle back on Slack, you accept the lunch invite, you survive the happy hour talking entirely about baseball and tacos.
We do like everything right.
You have built the social trust. You have proven you are not a cultural liability. Now, how does that team deliver feedback on the actual work you are doing? Because this is another massive, jarring pivot.
We are now entering the collision zone between the global concept of saving face and the American doctrine of radical candor.
Yes. This is huge. In many East Asian cultures, for example, as well as in parts of the Middle East, the concept of saving face, protecting someone's public dignity, is absolutely paramount.
It's foundational to social harmony.
If a manager needs to criticize your work, they will almost always do it indirectly. They will take you aside privately. They might use subtle hints, metaphors, or gentle suggestions that you are expected to decode.
Delivering direct, blunt criticism in front of your peers is considered a severe, almost unforgivable social violation.
It destroys harmony. But in the American workplace, and this has been heavily amplified by Silicon Valley culture, modern consulting paradigms, and the widespread adoption of management philosophies literally named radical candor, direct, immediate, and blunt assessment is not viewed as a violation at all.
In fact, it is considered a form of profound professional respect.
Wait, I need to push back on this on behalf of the listener, because if I am a new hire and I have worked for 3 days on my very first project and I present it in a team meeting.
And a senior colleague chimes in.
Yeah, a senior colleague immediately looks at the screen and says, I don't think this approach works at all. The underlying data is completely flawed and we need to pivot this entire strategy by tomorrow morning.
Ouch.
Right. I am supposed to just sit there and nod. Isn't that deeply humiliating to be dismantled in front of the entire team?
It absolutely feels humiliating if you are applying a saving face cultural lens to the interaction.
Which most of the world does.
If you view it through that lens, you feel attacked, diminished, and disrespected. But if you apply the American radical candor lens, you realize that colleague is actually doing you an immense favor.
A favor, how?
They are demonstrating respect by not wasting your time with patronizing sugarcoating. They are trusting that you are professional enough and mature enough to separate your personal ego from the objective work product.
They are attacking the data, not your soul.
Exactly. And this introduces what I think is the most vital psychological concept from the entire guide: emotional stoicism.
Yes. Emotional stoicism is the mandatory, expected response to blunt feedback in the U.S. Now, it is important to clarify that this doesn't mean acting like a cold, unfeeling robot.
No, you're not a machine.
It means demonstrating visible resilience. It is the active, observable separation of your personal feelings from professional critique.
This is a performance.
If you visibly shrink in your chair, if your voice shakes, if you get defensive and start arguing, or if you appear visibly wounded by the criticism, you fail the test.
You get subconsciously tagged by the room as fragile. You get labeled as not tough enough for the high-performance environment.
And the consequences of that label are insidious. If people think you are fragile, the organization will start walking on eggshells around you.
They will stop giving you honest, direct feedback to avoid hurting your feelings.
Which means your work stops improving. Which means you stop getting promoted.
Yeah.
Which eventually leads to your exit from the company.
So how do you project this emotional stoicism when your heart is racing because your work was just called flawed?
The guide gives us the ideal, bulletproof response script for this exact moment of blunt public feedback.
Let's hear the script.
You take a breath. You don't get defensive. You say, I appreciate that feedback. Let me clarify the data source I used. And if that doesn't address the concern, I will rework this and have version 2 to you by tomorrow morning.
That script is a masterpiece of corporate verbal judo.
Okay.
Look at the mechanics of it. First, I appreciate that feedback. This instantly neutralizes any perceived hostility in the room.
You are welcoming the critique.
Second, let me clarify the data source. This is brilliant because it allows you to calmly, rationally defend your methodology and show your work, but without sounding argumentative or emotional.
You're just talking about the data.
And finally, I will rework this and have version 2 by morning. This ultimate statement proves that your primary loyalty is to the quality of the company's work product, not to protecting your own bruised ego.
It's amazing. But this brings up a really obvious, terrifying problem for the new hire. You just promised version 2 by morning?
The clock is ticking.
How do you deliver on that radical feedback? How do you instantly produce a flawless version 2 when you haven't actually been trained on how to do the project yet?
Ah, yes. The great American myth of the training period.
It's a complete myth. The guide is almost painfully funny about this. In many countries, your first week is heavily, rigidly structured.
You shadow a senior colleague for days.
You read thick training manuals, you take online quizzes, but in the American high-performance workplace, you are going to be handed a messy, ambiguous, complex project on day 2, and your manager is just going to look at you and say, take a stab at this.
Take a stab at this. Another slightly violent, highly kinetic American idiom.
Right, just stab the project. What does it actually mean? Am I supposed to finish it? Am I supposed to guess?
It implies a fearless attempt. When a manager says, take a stab at this, they are saying, I know you don't know exactly how to do this, but I want you to try to figure it out using your own initiative, rather than waiting for me to spoon-feed you instructions.
They want you to move forward.
I am looking for momentum, not perfection. The absolute worst, most damaging thing you can do when handed a project and told to take a stab at it is to freeze and respond with, but I haven't been trained on this process yet.
Because if you say that, you instantly brand yourself with the worst possible label in American business. High maintenance.
If we connect this all the way back to the bigger picture we discussed at the very beginning.
The overarching expectation to hit the ground running.
Right. Saying, I haven't been trained is essentially a flat refusal to run. It forces the manager to stop their own critical work, sit down and hold your hand.
And managers hate that.
The ultimate American professional ideal is finding the perfect razor-thin balance between independence and alignment. You need to be autonomous enough to figure out the basic mechanics and draft a messy first version on your own, but aligned enough to check in and ask for feedback before you finalize the direction.
So to help listeners navigate this terrifying lack of formal training without looking incompetent, the guide provides a toolkit of what they call linguistic life rafts.
These are essential.
These are survival phrases. I want to rapidly run through these because listeners should literally memorize them. If you are starting a job next week, write these on a sticky note and put it on your monitor.
They are incredibly useful for maintaining the illusion of total calm competence while you are actively, frantically figuring things out behind the scenes.
First, life raft. To sound competent when you are actually quite confused. Let's say you're in a meeting, they are throwing around acronyms you've never heard, and you don't know what's going on.
You do not say, "I don't understand."
Instead, you use the magic word, calibrated. You raise your hand and say, "I just want to make sure I'm fully calibrated with the team's expectations here."
Calibrated is a fantastic, highly effective piece of vocabulary. It sounds technical, it sounds precise, and it sounds objective.
This is such a great word.
It removes the vulnerable emotion of confusion and replaces it with the concept of a minor mechanical adjustment. You aren't lost. You are simply fine-tuning your alignment.
Second life raft, to buy time. You are overwhelmed. You absolutely cannot hit the 5 p.m. deadline they just gave you, but you know you can't just say, "No, I can't do it."
You never want to just flat out refuse.
Instead, you negotiate quality versus timeline. You say, "To ensure I deliver the high quality this project needs, could I get this to you by tomorrow morning instead?"
This is a brilliant reframing technique. You are reframing a delay as a fierce commitment to excellence.
You're protecting the work.
You aren't failing to deliver on time because you are slow.
Yeah.
You are actively protecting the standard of the work. Managers will almost always grant an extension if it is framed as a quality control measure.
Third life raft, when you inevitably make a mistake. Because you will. You are moving fast and breaking things. When the manager points out an error, you don't just grovel and apologize profusely.
You implement a system or a process to prevent it, and you announce that system.
You say, "Thanks for catching that. Here's the corrected version, and I've implemented a checklist process on my end to prevent this going forward."
Americans love systems. They worship processes. If you frame a personal mistake as an opportunity to build a better, more resilient process, you actually gain credibility in their eyes rather than losing it.
You proved you are a problem solver.
Exactly.
And finally, the fourth life raft. To show initiative without overstepping your bounds, you say, "I took the liberty of," as in, "I noticed the data was messy, so I took the liberty of drafting a new spreadsheet template for us."
That phrase is the verbal embodiment of the hit the ground running philosophy. It signals proactive, aggressive energy, but the phrasing maintains a polite, professional boundary.
You took the initiative, but you are still presenting it for their approval.
Yes, it's very balanced.
Okay, we have covered an immense amount of ground today. We have traversed the entire first week.
From the proactive default on Monday morning.
And the danger of waiting for IT, to surviving the intense social vetting process of a sad desk lunch, to decoding the Slack emojis, to handling radical candor like an emotional stoic.
That's a lot to process.
So let's distill all of this cultural anthropology into some concrete, actionable homework for the listener based on this guide.
I would boil it down to 3 specific, highly actionable takeaways that you should implement in your very first week.
Number 1, observe and mimic the digital ecosystem immediately. On day 1, pick 3 successful colleagues. Study their digital footprint.
Look at their email rhythm, the length of their paragraphs, their Slack response times, their emoji usage.
Do they use exclamation points or are they strictly periods? And then ruthlessly mimic that exact cadence. Become a digital chameleon.
Blend right in.
Number 2, prepare and practice a conversational 30-second intro spiel. Your name, your exact role, and a burst of proactive energy. Have it ready to deploy in the lobby, in the elevator, or in a Zoom room.
Own your introduction.
And number 3, do not eat alone. Even if it terrifies you, invite at least one approachable ally to lunch on Tuesday or Wednesday to begin building that critical, informal trust network.
And as a final note of genuine encouragement, if you are listening to this and feeling slightly terrified, remember that feeling completely overwhelmed by these unspoken contradictory rules is entirely universal.
Everyone feels it.
Even native-born American professionals feel this exact same vertigo when they switch industries or join a new company. The goal of your first week is not to be flawless.
Definitely not.
The goal is simply to project a baseline of confidence while you actively decode the new environment. Give yourself a little grace, even if the culture doesn't explicitly offer it.
Absolutely. survive the 72 hours. But before we wrap up today, I won't leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over, something that builds on everything we have explored today but looks toward the future.
A changing landscape.
We have spent this entire deep dive talking primarily about the physical and digital cues of a traditional or hybrid first week. We talked about arriving 15 minutes early to the office, making strong eye contact in the lobby, navigating the physical lunch invite, and surviving the happy hour.
We've been analyzing the physical spaces where this crucial vetting occurs.
Exactly. But consider this shifting landscape. As the American workplace moves increasingly toward fully remote, asynchronous work,
Where teams are often spread across drastically different global time zones.
and no one is ever in the same room. How are these deeply ingrained, informal vetting sessions and these moments of radical candor going to mutate?
That is the new frontier of corporate anthropology.
Right. When there is no physical lunch table to be invited to, when there is no after-work happy hour to navigate the safe and unsafe topics, how will you prove your cultural fluency?
It gets much harder.
How do you demonstrate that crucial emotional stoicism when the blunt feedback isn't delivered across a conference table, but is just a highlighted comment floating in the margins of a shared Google Doc?
It's so impersonal.
It is something to seriously think about as you sit down to draft that very first Monday morning Slack message. Because at the end of the day, proving you belong in a high-performance professional environment isn't like reading a clean binary X-ray.
It's all about the nuance.
You are swimming in complex, diagnostic, muddy waters, and the only way to survive the dive is to learn the currents.